Alright, let's get right into it. Because if you think war zones are dangerous, try living in a peaceful lakeside neighborhood where the real weapons are clipboards, fake smiles, and the HOA president with a smile that could cut glass. You know what I mean? I'm telling you, after 30 years in Delta Force, surviving places most people can't even spell. A tackle box finally seeing some use instead of just collecting dust. The ink was still drying on the paperwork, surveyed 3 times, lawyers double-checked. I knew every inch was mine. Or so I thought. In strolls Grace White, homemade chocolate chip cookies in one hand, folder in the other, all charm and sweetness. Introducing her team, a so-called surveyor and some guy in khakis, both of whom turned out to be her drinking buddies playing dress-up. I should have clocked it right there. When she snapped at the surveyor with a voice cold enough to freeze a whiskey sour, then flipped back to sweet as pie when she caught my eye. For 20 minutes, she played the perfect neighbor, thanking me for my service, talking up the community, even hinting the HOA needed experienced leadership. I thought, maybe small-town life really is for me. Until, on the dot, she drops the act, lowers her voice, and slides that folder across the table. According to some HOA bylaw from 1974, she claimed 50 feet of my lakefront, including my dock, belonged to the common area. 60 days to comply or she'd pursue legal remedies. Yeah, that happened. She honey-trapped me, classic psychological ops, rapport, trust, ambush. Rookie move, I fell for it. But as she strutted out, I caught a glimpse of desperation. Nice clothes, cheap purse, phone buzzing with whispers about needing 3 more months to pay. She wasn't just power-hungry. She was under pressure, and my property was her escape plan. Later, watching the security footage, I saw her on my dock taking GPS coordinates, measuring, photographing, not admiring the scenery, but working the angles, literally. That's when it hit me. She didn't care about bylaws. She cared about what was under my lake. Now, military training does funny things to your brain. You see patterns where most people see coincidence. Her whole operation screamed reconnaissance. By day 3, the psychological warfare had started. Floodlights at 3 a.m. for pipe maintenance. Crews in and out all day, testing water. But it looked more like prepping for an underwater demolition than any environmental test I've seen. Grace barking orders, the fake smile barely holding, and phone calls about loan sharks and needing for million 90 days. Who borrows that kind of cash from people you don't want to owe? Then one morning, I looked out and saw divers in my lake, scanning the bottom like we were back in Afghanistan. Every alarm bell in my head was screaming. I called 911, told them about trespassers in diving gear, metal detectors, the works. The dispatcher was polite, but it was clear they thought it was a neighborly spat. And right then I realized, I played right into Grace's hands. She wanted me to look unstable, paranoid. The classic stressed-out veteran who sees threats everywhere. Officer shows up, Grace hands over official documents. Perfect performance as the caring HOA leader dealing with a difficult, new resident. And me? I sounded like a conspiracy theorist with PTSD, ranting about diverse and hidden treasure. Grace waited until the officer left, then delivered the kill shot, a veiled threat about unnecessary 911 calls being harassment, and a suggestion that maybe I look into anger management at the VA. She studied me, knew exactly how to set me off, and just used my own reflexes against me. But she made a mistake, too. While she was busy orchestrating her operation, I was watching. Those divers weren't scientists. They were treasure hunters. No water samples, just sealed containers coming up from the lake. And I overheard something about your father's notes, and 15 feet down, northwest of the dock. This wasn't about my land. It was about what her dad, Franklin White, an old underwater welder with a mysterious past, had buried there 30 years ago. That's when my training kicked in for real. I turned from panicked rookie to intelligence operative. Hidden cameras, listening devices, And, best of all, a new ally. Eleanor Walker, 72, sharp as a tack, and living next door since the Reagan era. She remembered everything. Franklin, she said, was suddenly rich in 1987, buying up property after some construction funds vanished. The feds sniffed around, but nothing stuck. And Franklin always joked, if I disappear, I buried it where the HOA can't check. She thought he was crazy. Maybe not. Meanwhile, Grace was hemorrhaging cash, loan sharks, private investigators, fake surveys about my daily routine, GPS trackers on my truck. Instead of removing the tracker, I used it to feed her false intel, bank visits, meetings with lawyers, pure counterintelligence. Watching her team work the lake in a perfect grid, I realized she had maps, notes, or something. This was a $1 million operation, not HOA busy work. But while I was busy playing spy, Grace played a different game, community manipulation. She documented my every move, built a case about unstable veteran behavior, and paid neighbors to testify I was dangerous. At the emergency HOA meeting, she paraded charts, timelines, expert opinions, all designed to paint me as a threat. The restraining order was a done deal. I was banned from my own dock for 30 days. Grace threw a champagne party. I considered packing up, walking away from it all. But then Eleanor called in the middle of the night. Rex, they're tearing up your lake. They found something big. My old team's photo stared at me from the wall. And I remembered. We never left a man behind. So I called my buddy Marcus, who still had connections at the FBI. You want the biggest embezzlement bust since 1987? Get your friend on the line. The FBI took my months of evidence, did their homework, and made me a confidential informant. For the first time, I had the law on my side. And just as Grace got cocky, thinking she'd won, the FBI suggested a little theater of their own, a fake treasure map, planted for Grace to discover. She broke into my house, took the bait, and at the big community event, with cameras rolling and half the town watching, she dove into the public lake looking for Franklin's backup stash. The chest surfaced, not with gold, but with a rubber duck and a note. Try the community pool. The meltdown was spectacular. She screamed, threw equipment, became the internet's new meme. Rubber Duck Karen, they called her. But even after public humiliation, Grace was desperate, down to her last 30 grand, facing foreclosure, threats from people who don't make threats twice. The FBI was waiting. When her divers finally hauled up the real loot from my lake, gold bars, cash, government bonds, the feds moved in. But in her panic, Grace called 911, reporting armed men stealing her historic artifacts. The irony? The armed men were the FBI. Her frantic call confirmed her exact location and set up the sting operation perfectly. Flashing lights, agents everywhere, Grace caught red-handed, screaming, "I'm the victim," as the cuffs clicked. The same officers she called for help took her away. Neighbors cheered. The restraining order was dropped. The HOA dissolved. I bought her house at auction for pennies, renovated it, and donated it to homeless veterans. Full circle. Grace wrote me from prison, warning, the game is bigger than you think. Maybe she's right. But as I sit on my dock, sun setting, kids laughing by the lake, Eleanor bringing cookies, I realize, sometimes justice comes in the strangest ways. What would you have done differently? Would you have quit or fought back? Drop your thoughts below. Justice, paranoia, community, where do you stand? If you enjoyed seeing karma delivered with a side of rubber duck, hit that like button. The story isn't over. Not by a long shot.